I think we need to keep reminding people that that was a condition, horrible condition under which we existed for years and years and generations, and the actual end to it should be commemorated and celebrated. So it's always been a major part in my family and the community that I grew up in East Austin.
The first celebrations of Juneteenth were used as political rallies and to teach freed slaves about their voting rights. Within a short time, however, Juneteenth was marked by festivities throughout the state.
Oh, brothers, keep your lamps trimmed and burning.
Very quickly, Juneteenth became a cultural celebration.
Juneteenth, I think, caught on in the later years as blacks started to socialize more together, started to form their own conventions, whether they were church conventions, as they started to go to school, and the day became more definitive because word was slow.
Many traditions continue today. Rodeos, parades, baseball games, and barbecue are just a few of the typical Juneteenth activities. Juneteenth almost always focused on education and self-improvement.
The freedmen embraced June 19th wholeheartedly. It was a day to remember what life was like before emancipation.
Most of the festivities were held in rural areas around rivers and creeks that could provide for activities such as fishing and horseback riding. Often, church grounds would be the site for such events. In time, however, black groups collected funds to purchase tracts of land for their celebrations, including Juneteenth. A common name for these sites was Emancipation Park.
There were different locations around Austin where they would celebrate, and it was like they would come in shifts because everybody didn't get off at the same time. So you see the maids were there, the cooks were there first, the laundresses at the celebration grounds, but the chauffeurs, they couldn't leave until they got off work in the evening.
There are accounts of Juneteenth activities being interrupted and halted by white landowners demanding that their laborers return to work. However, in many cases, employers allowed their workers to take the day off, and some even made donations of food and money. For decades, these annual celebrations flourished, growing continuously with each passing year.
It was the one annual holiday that African Americans owned, and when they came to celebrate, it was a way of looking at the past, but also trying to understand the present to move to the future. And so it went beyond celebrating by having baseball games and barbecues. There also were long speeches and luminaries from the black community present to remind one of the dark past of slavery and the promises of the present.
At one time, 30,000 people gathered at Comanche Crossing in Mejia, Texas for the Juneteenth event. In the towns and cities, parades were held, and often a Juneteenth queen would be selected. In Austin, Juneteenth was first celebrated in 1867 under the direction of the Freedmen's Bureau. The Austin parade featured the Goddess of Liberty.
In 1888, they rededicated the new Capitol, and at the top of the new Capitol, they placed a Goddess of Liberty. Prior to this year, the freedmen would have these huge parades, and they would have floats with a lot of little children. Usually there were children on it representing each state. But in the Juneteenth of 1889, they elected the Goddess of Liberty. And each year after that, up until the 1930s, when it went out of vogue and they started calling her the Juneteenth Queen, they had a Goddess of Liberty.
Jaybird sitting in the top of the tree, tra-la-la-la-lee.
When Juneteenth was celebrated back when we were children, Dad would dig a hole in the ground out in the yard and put wire over that hole that he would dig and put the wood and all that down in the hole, and he'd barbecue. Well, most neighbors did that because they didn't have the barbecue pits. And you could smell it all over the community.
Big days of barbecues and all kinds of food. Good cakes. I can remember the ladies from our church. It was a big thing. All the different potato salads. I've never had so many different potato salads except on Juneteenth. But yes, I was fortunate enough to celebrate, I can remember slightly, on a site in Austin that's called Old Emancipation Park.
The early celebrations always had the participation of the governor of Texas. and the members of the legislature. The governor would allow the organizers of Juneteenth celebrations to shoot the cannons on the Capitol grounds. And they started firing the cannons Juneteenth morning at 4 o'clock to wake up the celebrants, to alert them that it's time to get out of the bed.
They were proud of the fact that they were free, and they were proud to teach their children about it as best that they could.
I leave it's 1861 when us come to Texas. Mice were pretty good. Treat us just about like you would a good mule. Us had the hoodooism to keep mice from being mean. Us get the stick and match so many notches on it and slip up to master front steps without him seeing us and put this stick right up under his doorsteps. Every night we'll go back to the stick and drive it down a notch. By the time the last notch in the ground, it make mice so good to us. That called hoodooism. When I was set free, my master called for me and told me I was going to be free on the 19th of June. He said I could stay too, and he would give me $5 per month if I stay and help him with the crops. Some paid us and some didn't. I made musician after I was freed. I made my first fiddle out of a gourd. If I made musician before I was freed, they could not have bought me for any price. That's right, before June 19th.
Unfortunately, with changing social conditions, the popularity of Juneteenth began to decline. The Great Depression of the 1930s forced many people off the farms and into the cities to find work. In these urban environments, employers were less eager to give workers the time off to celebrate the date. Thus, unless June 19th fell on a weekend, there were very few participants available. The people in Luling, Texas celebrated Juneteenth at a big annual picnic.
They had what they called the SP picnic. The Southern Pacific Railroad would stage a picnic and have these large barbecues, and they play baseball, and people would really celebrate with dances and gatherings, so it was a big deal.
The celebration of June 19th spread from Texas to the neighboring states of Louisiana and Arkansas. Celebrations were also held in Alabama, Florida, and California as African-American Texans migrated there.
It's that collective spirit and the fact that African Americans migrating from Texas into California, into New Jersey, they carry with them their traditions, they carry with them their practices, and so it's a part of historic memory.
But as black people migrated west and north to California, to Michigan, to Indiana, and places like that, Juneteenth becomes something that goes with them.
California has a big one because there's a large migration of Texans who went from here to California to live, and so they have big celebrations.
In 1978, Texas State Representative Al Edwards of Houston envisioned that blacks could have a formal celebration of emancipation from slavery. During his first year as a legislator, he authored the most meaningful piece of legislation for the black community that had ever existed in the history of Texas or any other state. He wrote and lobbied to get passed into law the bill making June 19th a legal state holiday. It would be the first official black state holiday in the U.S.
I'd gone over to the Senate and I talked to the lieutenant governor at that time, who was Governor Bill Hobby, and he said he was all right with it. I'd gone to the governor, who at that time was Governor Bill Clemens. His position was, I'm not going to help you get your bill passed, but I'm not going to fight it. If you get it passed, then I'll sign it.
At a memorable and historical ceremony on the grounds of the Texas State Capitol in Austin, the bill was signed into law on June 13, 1979. Representative Edwards has since actively sought to spread the observance of Juneteenth all across America.
Other states are actually trying to get legislation that would create a holiday, just as we did in Texas, to make it a legal holiday. Buffalo, New York has the second largest Juneteenth celebration in the United States. But that June 19th has nothing to do with New York. They want to use that name just in the general sense of the meaning of freedom.